What is going on, everyone? Happy Sunday. Welcome into another edition of GC Live Sunday Reset with your host, Jack Veltri. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in. This is a little bit different than what we normally do with going live. I'm actually pre-recording this week's episode of Sunday Reset because I will be in New York this weekend. So I'm recording this on Friday morning. But when this goes live, it will be on Sunday, and I will be somewhere in New York, whether it's in the city or on Long Island or whatever, hanging out with family and having a good time. So not going live this weekend, but still wanted to get an episode out just because a lot has happened in Gamecock athletics. A lot, especially with football. Got some basketball to talk about today. A lot going on this week, and want to recap it and break it all down. So I appreciate you guys all tuning in as usual. But before we get rolling, I want to talk to you guys about our main sponsor of the show, Prize Picks. So, Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. So, instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. And then, of course, you'll watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. I have been using Prize Picks a lot in the past, not so much maybe like before Thanksgiving, but I definitely started getting a little bit back into it, with Thanksgiving football going on, NFL, wanted to get involved in the game, made some picks and won some money, also lost some money. But that's the beauty of it. You pick different players that you want. It's whether it's NFL, college football, pro basketball, college basketball, no MLB right now, but there's a lot of different options. And that's what makes Prize Picks one of the best out there, if not the best, actually, to be honest. So if you're interested, just go to prizepicks.com or download the Prize Picks app and use the code on screen, GC, that stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. So thank you, Prize Picks, for always being a great sponsor at GC. So we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to break this down into a few different sections. Number one, we're going to be talking about the new supposed offensive coordinator position at South Carolina and who's going to be filling that. We'll also talk a little bit of transfer portal and recruiting real quick. And then to kind of close things out, we'll be talking some basketball. I had a chance to go out to Ridgeview on Thursday and go watch a few Gamecock men's basketball 2025 signees play in action, and my first time seeing them, and we'll have a lot to talk about from that too. But let's get started with the football first. There's no game to talk about like usual because on Sundays we're normally breaking down the football game from the night before, but we're kind of in that period now where it's like, we'll have the Citrus Bowl coming up on New Year's Eve. We'll obviously talk about that then. But we also, there's no games right now to get into. I mean, like we could talk Army Navy if you guys want, but I don't know what the score on that is yet or anything. We could talk men's basketball against Upstate, but it hasn't happened yet at the time of recording this. So when we do lives and stuff and we're out of football season, we'll talk whatever's going on during the week. I think that's what it's going to be. When it's not a regular weekend where there's a college or South Carolina college football is going on. So, but there is a lot of news in the Gamecock football world. And I think at the top of the list, outside of the transfer portal and stuff, Mike Shula, supposed to be the new OC for South Carolina, taking over for Dow Loggins, who left to take the head coaching position at Appalachian State. And Gamecock Central's Chris Clark, who always does a fantastic job. Can't say enough good things about Chris and the job that he does in the recruiting and the in the college football space. He's one of the best out there for sure. Him and Wes Mitchell do a fantastic job. But Chris broke the story the other day that South Carolina is moving closer towards hiring Mike Shula as the new offensive coordinator, like I said. And that's not really surprising. I think I've talked about it a little bit on 107.5 The Game and obviously with Kendall on GC Live earlier in the week. But I still want to break it down a little bit more. Look, I think it's a great hire whenever it does officially become official. I haven't seen South Carolina post about it or anything. And maybe that's the way it's going to be. Maybe the next time we talk to Shane Beamer, it'll be like, yeah, it's official. But let's talk about it like it is. I really do like this hire. Look, Shula's got a great track record of coaching many different stops in the NFL. Obviously, he was the head coach at Alabama for a few years. He's the guy that was at Bama right before Saban took over. So he's known for that. He's also known with the NCAA violations that got thrown on the Crimson Tide at the end of his tenure and stuff and all that. But I think more so than that, you know him if you're a Panthers fan, if you're a Gamecock and Panthers fan, you know him as the guy that worked with Cam Newton during his best years with the Panthers. And Cam Newton obviously won Rookie of the Year in 2011. He also won the NFL's MVP award in 2015 with a great season that year. And the Panthers went to the Super Bowl that year. They went 15-1 the regular season, set the world on fire offensively. I mean, 31.3 points per game in 2015, nearly 400 yards of total offense. I mean, that is insane stuff. As a result, he did win, Mike Shula did, the offensive coordinator of the year from Pro Football Focus, which, I mean, take that for what you will. I think that's really cool. So I think this is the right hire. And it's not just Cam Newton that he's worked with. He's worked with Josh Allen, my guy, Buffalo Bill, future NFL MVP, I think this year. Are we? I mean, I might be wrong in that, might be not. It feels like Josh is probably going to win MVP this year, as if he's not winning enough with his engagement and maybe getting a Super Bowl ring. I mean, the guy is living his best life. But Mike Shula worked with Josh in 22 and 23, and not as quarterbacks coach or anything, because you had Joe Brady, who's now the OC with the Bills. He was the quarterbacks coach at the time, and you had Ken Dorsey was the offensive coordinator of the Bills, and that we know how that went. So Mike had a hand in helping Josh. Granted, a few years after he came to the league and stuff. But he's also worked with guys like David Gerard's another guy with the and maybe most of you guys listening probably know who that is, unless you're like a younger listener or something paying or watching this. But David Gerard was a guy that late 2000s with the Jaguars, had been there since 02, I believe. He hadn't really done much, hadn't really gotten his chance. Once Mike Shula got to Jacksonville in 07, you see Gerard really start to play a lot. He has a great first year in 07, 18 touchdowns, 3 picks, and then he's the starter and makes a Pro Bowl in 09. I mean, that's really cool stuff right there. And yeah, he helped kind of develop him into a guy that you now know a little bit. And it's not just that, he's also worked with, and this is where you might think, he really isn't that good and all this. If you're questioning the hire at all, worked with Drew Lock for a little bit with the Broncos, worked with Teddy Bridgewater also there. He also, interestingly enough, worked with the Giants as their offensive coordinator in the final 2 years of Eli Manning's career, and also the first year of Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones. And look, for all I know, everyone now is going to be like, oh, Daniel Jones stinks. He sucks, all this and that. Back then, as a rookie, you look at his numbers, Daniel Jones actually wasn't too bad. 62% completion rate, passed for over 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He did take 38 sacks, but look, this is a guy that, again, it was the transition of power, essentially, where Eli was the starter in 18, and then 19 was his last season. He was dealing with injuries and stuff, and then he eventually got kind of pushed out for Jones, and that wasn't even a full season of starting for Daniel Jones. So, and that's a pretty good year right there, I think, in my opinion. So, look, the point is, he's got the track record. He's got the experience. He's also worked with South Carolina for a season now where he was an on-field assistant, and he got to be around Lenore Sellers quite a bit. And that's the big thing. You're working with a quarterback that could potentially be a Heisman Trophy candidate in 2025. And I think he will be for sure. I think he's going to be in the running for it if he has another good season. He's only going to get better from here, I think, going into his redshirt sophomore year next year. I really like what he can bring to the table with Sellers, because we've seen him work with quarterbacks of similar skill sets. Cam Newton obviously is the number one comparison a lot of people like to make because, the Superman nickname and all that, which I think is starting to kind of grow with Sellers a little bit. But also the athleticism and the dual threat ability both quarterbacks have. And I'm not saying Lenoris is a 1-to-1 of Cam Newton, but you can't deny that the skill set is kind of similar in the sense that they both have good arms, and number two, they can run. Like, they are big, physical, mobile quarterbacks that are hard to bring down. We've seen a lot of that in Lenoris's first year as the starter in 2024. And then I think Josh Allen's another interesting comparison because I think Josh probably has the much better arm compared to Lenoris. I mean, I don't think anyone's denying that. I think Josh probably is one of the better arms in all of football right now. But again, he's another big, physical, bruising guy that is tough to tackle, and he makes crazy plays happen. So I like those two comparisons, and I think we'll see what happens. I like this move for the reason that I don't think you're going to see a lot. You'll see some changes, I think, in the offense and what Mike Shula might call, but it won't be like a complete different system where Lenoris has to learn a whole new playbook and stuff. And that's not really an issue to learn a whole new playbook. It happens all the time. Look at guys in the NFL that are in terrible situations. Like, I'm thinking just off the top of my head, like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, when they were both in their first few years with the Browns and Jets, respectively. They're getting so many new coordinators and head coaches in the building with those, bad organizations, quite frankly. And they got to learn a new playbook, it seems like, every year. So it happens. But for Sellers, a guy that is at the peak of his powers, it seems like, honestly, not even at the peak yet. He seems like he's getting there. Feels like there's still a little bit of untapped potential that he's yet to hit, surprisingly enough, with how good he's been this year. But he could have a break. I mean, he could have that Heisman level season next year and be the guy that gets, picked top 5 in the NFL draft in 2026 or whatever you may have it. So I do think, like, we're going to see a lot of similarities in what Shula and Loggins call, maybe, because again, I don't have any. It's just more so vibes than anything. But I do feel like post bye week, look, South Carolina's offense had been. I've always said, I've been on the record saying I think South Carolina's offense was really solid from the LSU game on, where you saw a lot of good things in the offense with Dowell Loggins calling plays. He was in his bag of tricks at times, calling whatever he really wanted to. But then you have games like Ole Miss and Oklahoma where you're kind of struggling on offense. And I think post bye week, there was probably some changing of the guard, me, not probably fully, but I think it was more of a collective effort to call plays and get Shula involved a little bit more and stuff. I don't know. I find it funny that the offense had this uptick once November started and they became impossible to stop. It's kind of like 2 years ago when Marcus Satterfield was the coordinator at South Carolina. We know how those final 3 games of the year went. So I think this is a good move. We'll obviously have to see how it happens and how it turns out. Again, we're judging this based off of what he's done in the past, but the track record is there, and it's a good one, right? And I don't think a lot of people are questioning this hire because they've seen what Mike has done with guys like Sellers before, and he's got a long history. He's been a coach for such a long time now, and I think this is also something that doesn't get talked about enough. He's been a quarterback in the SEC. He played quarterback at Alabama back in the 80s. And look, that's a long time ago, different time back then compared to now. But he's been there, done that before in the SEC, and he's seen what it's like to be a quarterback in this league. So that's going to be valuable to Sellers. I also wonder, will he be coaching on the sidelines, calling plays next year? And even in the bowl game, we don't know that for sure if he's going to be calling plays in the bowl game or not, what the case with Dowell Loggins will be. If it were me, I would just have Mike be the one calling plays in the bowl game and just letting Dowell move on to App State. I understand he wants to help out still and all that, but he's a first-time head coach at a new school where App State needs to get back on track. So he's got a lot of work to do on his own plate there. I do think, though, that I would expect Shula to be on the sideline next year. That's just my feel on it. He was on the sideline this year. I get it's probably a better vantage point from up in the press box like Loggins had as OC for the last 2 years, but I think that connection on the field is really going to be helpful with Sellers. And Shula was right there to talk to him through anything on the field. And that's a big difference, I think, in my opinion. So good hire. I'm really excited to see what happens next, and we'll see. So now let's dive a little bit into the transfer portal a little bit. Again, like I said before, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, Kevin Miller. I think everyone's been doing a great job over at GC. There's been a lot of movement going on. And so I will say this first. If you're not already, I always say this every single show, and you probably get sick of me saying it. Number one, also subscribe to our YouTube page, Gamecock Central. If you're watching this video right now, you can pause it. I'm not going anywhere because it's not a live stream, so you're not missing anything. You can hit pause, and I'll be right here waiting for you when you come back. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page. It literally takes 2 seconds. You hit the subscribe button, and then also give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. And that really helps out the channel, knowing that you guys are enjoying what we're talking about here and chatting it up with you guys. And I wish I was doing this live and getting to interact a little bit more, but we're working with what we got. And would really appreciate the thumbs up button and you guys subscribing. It helps out a lot for sure. Number two, and I'll get into my point here in a second. Subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. Guys, if you're listening and you're not in on the know, if you're not subscribed to our premium stories and stuff, all the transfer portal news that's going on right now, we got a great deal right now. $1 for 7 days. If you want to just be part of the team for a week and just see what is going on, get your transfer portal roundup and all this other great stuff going on with Gamecock football and men's basketball, women's basketball. Baseball is going to be starting up soon. I'm going to have some baseball coming out relatively soon. There are a lot of good stuff is going on right now, and I would highly recommend subscribing to GamecockCentral.com. And hopefully you guys listening already are, but if you're not, this is definitely a great time to do so. And that brings me to my point. We have the transfer portal headquarters on GamecockCentral.com. Again, exclusive for our subscribers. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of who's coming when, who, all this and that. But I'll give the Cliff Notes version, essentially, like I did the other day with Kendall on GC Live. South Carolina, at the time, it's December 13th right now on Friday when I'm recording this. But, by Sunday, South Carolina will already have some guys on visits that have already come by and stuff. And who knows, maybe there's a commit or two. But South Carolina, I can say there are a lot of confirmed visits. There are some defensive linemen, a linebacker from a small school, which I'll talk about him since it's been kind of public knowledge out there. Andrew Jones, guy from Grambling. I think he would be a good fit at South Carolina. He's taking a visit here relatively soon. And I think at a linebacker position where you need new blood, like you're losing Bam Martin Scott, Debo Williams, and Demetrius Knight Jr. That's your entire starting linebacker core. I know you're going to have guys like J.R. Johnson coming back, but you need more. And you're going to have other guys coming in from the high school ranks and some other returning guys, but you need new guys in there too to fill those voids because this was such a veteran-led defense. I think that's why they had so much success this year. I think Andrew Jones can be a guy that fills that role nicely because he had, I think, 111 tackles this season at Grambling. And yes, it's Grambling. But guess what? That is South Carolina's way of doing things. They find the guys that no one gives to what's about. Like everyone wants to go after the 5-star guys that played at Alabama and Texas A&M and Ole Miss, Ellis, all these big name brands that have the 5-star guys. Wonder why they're transferring? They don't play a ton at these schools. Like I think of like a Monkel Goodwine as an example. I think he's going to be, if he comes back next year, I think he has the potential to be that starting guy in the defensive line for Carolina because newsflash, you're also losing so much of your interior D-line. Monkel Goodwine, he didn't play a ton at Alabama. Like he might have been this highly recruited guy and stuff, but he didn't play a ton at Bama. And so bringing him into South Carolina, he didn't get to play a ton this year. But that's my point is that, look, you can play at these big schools and all that. Doesn't necessarily mean like what you're getting is like some 5-star. Like it doesn't always translate. And I'm not saying it won't translate with Monkel. But it's an example because there's so many situations out there where, people look at the stars and the ratings and the rankings and all that and where you came from. Like, oh my gosh, like just because you came from big name blue blood program and you're a 5-star, that must automatically mean you're the next big thing. Not necessarily always the case. We've seen perfect examples of that with a guy like Kyle Kennard winning all these awards this year, the Nagurski Trophy, All-American this, All-American that, SEC first team defense, all this great stuff. He came from Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech's not some slouch program. Heck, they just took Georgia to 8 overtimes in the final game of the regular season for the Yellow Jackets. But he wasn't some big name guy that was getting recruited by every major Power Four program. I guarantee you, after this year, if he had another year of eligibility, that would be a different story. But last year, not everyone was going after him. I think like Florida State was the only other big program locked in on him, and Missouri too. But South Carolina got him, and he became a stud. And Demetrius Knight's another good example. He's from Charlotte, not the city, the school, Charlotte 49ers. And he's a guy that has been, again, I think he's like the heart and soul of this defense outside of Debo Williams, because he's just such a good guy, very personable, very good player too. Again, he's going to go down in the history books at South Carolina as one of the best, and he'll be always remembered for that play he made against Clemson, the game-winning interception. People will remember that forever, for sure. But again, you have a lot of guys coming in on visits. I'm really excited to see who they bring in. And Chris made a good point of this on, I think it was Thursday night. He made this story about, just because South Carolina, everyone wants instant gratification. Everyone wants South Carolina to have the entire roster figured out in 10 seconds. Like, boom, snap of fingers. Like, they have every piece they need, all this and that. That's not reality, right? Things take time, and I think we all need to have patience with this, right? I don't know. I'm trying to think of the saying. The quickest doesn't always win the race, right? Like, slow and steady usually wins the race, right? Like, South Carolina is going to do what they do. They're not going to go out and just waste all their money on these guys that are just out there right now in the portal. When heck, it's December. It'll be December 15th when you guys watch this. Like, the portal will still be open for another 2 weeks, where guys can enter the transfer portal and decide, hey, like, I want a new opportunity somewhere else. So more guys are going to enter. That's not to say there aren't good guys in there right now. Obviously there are, considering how many are visiting South Carolina. But we haven't seen like a ton of offers yet. We haven't seen like guys commit to South Carolina yet. Again, the portal is still relatively new in opening up for this year. So I think we'll see more action occur as we get closer to the new year. And then you'll see guys come in. And look, it might not be the flashiest names, the names that you maybe know, like might not be a guy from Georgia or whatever. It might be a guy from Grambling, like Andrew Jones. It might be a guy from like, Marshall or one of these random small schools that maybe you don't even know or heard of. But guess what? Those are the guys that are usually pretty good for South Carolina. Like, we've seen it so many times before where guys just come in and they make a tremendous impact. Like, another one I'll think of, like Mario Anderson from Newberry. I know he's not in South Carolina anymore. He went to Memphis this year, and had a great season, by the way. But he was a guy that came from small school Newberry in South Carolina, transferred to the Gamecocks for the 2023 season. Granted, he didn't have like the greatest year ever. He only had like 723 yards, but he was productive for Carolina in that. Look, when South Carolina had no running game in 2023, I think he was the only guy that was semi-solid in the run game and showed some real flashes. So it's guys like that you're probably going to bring in, and you might not know the names or the schools they come from, but by golly, by the end of the year, you will probably know a lot about them. So really excited to see what they do in the portal. I think they got a lot of great options out there, and we'll see. But a lot of guys coming in on visits. The one name I will talk about that at the time of recording that he hasn't had a visit yet with South Carolina, I don't know if he will, KC Concepcion from NC State. And I'm hoping by the time you guys see this that not everything has completely 180'd and he's signed somewhere else or whatever the case might be, or all these other guys that we're talking about are just everywhere else now. But like I said, at the time of recording, South Carolina hasn't gotten him on an official visit yet. I do wonder if they're going to be able to. Again, there's other big SEC schools out there that want his services. He's a receiver from NC State. I will say this: he put South Carolina in his top 6 final schools. I wonder, it doesn't really mean a ton yet until you get him on campus and stuff. If you are, that's great. And if not, I don't know. I think you just move on to you don't rule it out, but like you keep your options open. And I think for South Carolina at receiver, last point I'll kind of make on the portal here, you need probably like one guy at receiver. Receiver is probably like one of the only positions where I don't think you need like 3 or 4 guys. You don't need a complete overhaul. Like when you went out and got Dre Jacobs, Dale Von Campbell, guys like that, Gage Larvin, Jared Brown. You don't have to go overhaul your entire receiver room. You have some of those guys returning. Like, let's assume Jared Brown's coming back, Nick Harbor, Mazio Bennett, not to mention guys like Malik Clark, Jordan Gidron, um, all these guys coming in at receiver. I know I'm missing a few off the top of my head, but you have a lot of guys coming in from the high school ranks. You're going to have, I think you probably only need about 1 to 2 wide receivers in the transfer portal to go get. That's just my thought process on it. I don't think you need every single guy out there, and if you don't get the big name guy, it's okay. There are going to be so many other talented receivers out there that you can go out there and get, and you'll be fine. And that could be said for just about any position. South Carolina has a lot of positions to hit up and bring in new blood from the portal. But I do think receiver is one of those spots where I don't think they necessarily need a whole overhaul. Like, they got some guys, they don't have the proven number one top flight guy. I don't think that's going to be the case next year either, but you have enough of a supporting cast to where I think you can make it work without the lead actor. You get my analogy there. So we'll see what happens. A lot going on in the portal, but like I said before, if you want more details, you want names of guys when they're visiting and all that, like, this is the time to subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. We'd love to have you. It's not even just that. You get to have great interaction with like-minded fans like yourselves listening out there that aren't subscribed, and get to chat on the Insiders Forum about all things going on with Gamecock football, baseball, anything really. Like, we talk about so many different things on there going on in the world of sports. It's like a sports fan's paradise, and especially if you're a Gamecock fan, it's some of the, like, truly coming from me. I will be as real as you guys know that. Like, I'm 100% authentic and real. I love getting to chat on the Insiders Forum with all of you guys. Like, it's so fun getting to talk Gamecock football, baseball, like literally anything going on. It's always cool. And then we get the nice messages too. So always appreciate you guys and all the good stuff you guys bring to the table on the Insiders Forum. But that's another big reason I would suggest getting involved outside of just the portal and all that. So definitely would recommend doing so. All right, let's get into the final topic of discussion here today. So we have some basketball going on, and obviously on the hardwood, South Carolina men's basketball is going to be taking on USC Upstate this weekend, and I would assume by the time this video comes out, South Carolina has already won. So we'll talk about that on At the Buzzer next week, when they'll already have played Clemson too and stuff. So we'll have a lot to recap then. But I went over to Ridgeview High School on Thursday night, the Bash, a local high school basketball tournament where some of the top teams around the country come in and play. You got obviously Moravian Prep from North Carolina, which we'll talk about that team in a second. You got a lot of in-state schools, like obviously Ridgeview, the host. You have like Wilson, schools like that, Keenan. Then you also have like Dynamic Prep from Texas. You have Oak Hill. A lot of big name guys went there, like Carmelo Anthony, guys like that. You also have IMG Academy. I know everyone's heard of them. So a lot of these big name high school prep schools for basketball and other sports were in the building playing last night, and got to go watch Moravian Prep play Ridgeview last night, specifically two Gamecock 2025 signees, Eli Ellis and Hayden Assemian, hit the hardwood last night, played against Ridgeview, and Corey Corbett was the only other guy that of interest. That he has a South Carolina offer, but nothing official yet, and he's a 2026 guard. But he's a guy with a Gamecock offer. His only other SEC offer at the time of recording is from Ole Miss, and that's an SEC offer right there. So I wonder what direction he'll go eventually, but he's got time to decide that. But the main point of discussion with this is the two other guys, Hayden Assemian and Eli Ellis. Lamont Paris and his staff were in the building last night. I'll share some details. By the time I put this out, I will have a story already posted on Friday afternoon, or Friday morning, I should say, of my thoughts from Eli Ellis and watching Hayden Assemian as well. Are they the real deal? I'll give another Cliff Notes version. Again, this is an exclusive story to GC, but if you're interested, go ahead and give it a read. It has a lot more in depth, but the Cliff Notes version that I could share a few days later is that, yeah, like everything Lamont Paris has said about these guys, I think it's real. Like, I was listening to Carolina Calls the other day, and LP was asked by Derek Scott, the play-by-play voice of the Gamecocks for men's basketball and baseball. He was asking LP about the recruiting of the signing class and all the guys, and he asked specifically about Eli Ellis and Hayden Assemian, what you think about them, and he revealed that he was going to go check them out at the Bash on Thursday. And again, Tanner Bronson was there, Kerry Rich, Eddie Shannon, like all those guys were there. They had a front row seat to see everything go down. LP was there too. By golly, those kids are good for Moravian Prep. It's not even just Hayden and Eli. Like they got some dudes on that team. Like they definitely got some pieces there. Obviously, Eli Ellis is the talk of the town. Like that kid is unbelievably talented. He had, I think, 28 points on Thursday. And I mean, look, he came out of the gate right away, pulling up from deep. I think he took a shot from near the logo from three with a guy in his face. He had a hand in his face from a defender, like an on-ball defender, right in his face. And he pulled up and just like it went. It's like the perfect swish where it's like the bang, like it just goes straight through. It's that perfect sound. It's like, man, like that was a sick shot. So like he had a lot of that last night, but he also just the thing that impresses me most about Eli is, and this is something I kind of worry about in the SEC a little bit next year moving forward, is when he drives to the basket, he's not a guy that's like he's under 6 foot, I think, but he's not a guy that's going to be driving to the rim and dunking on everyone and stuff. If he had, I joked with another beat guy last night. If he had Hayden's size and height with, put that with Eli's abilities and stuff on the floor, he'd be unstoppable. He'd be like Kevin Durant out there. But Eli's not the biggest, tallest dude, so he's not dunking on everyone. I don't even think I saw him dunk at all during layup lines last night during warm-up. So he's not going to dunk during a game. But the way he's able to get to the basket and hit these tough layups, I mean, shoot, anytime it's contested, you could have two guys in his face. He's going to find a way to get the ball in the net. And that's all great. That's what he needs to be doing. The driving layups, the tough contested shots are great. The thing I worry about with him a little bit, and it's not an issue right now, he's making these shots more times than not. It's when he drives to the rim, he stutter steps, stops. I'm trying to describe it the best I can. And then he kind of he pump fakes his way towards, he basically tries to get the on-ball defender to break off a little bit, like catch him slipping a little bit, and hope he has that like when he does stop, he's got that tiny window to where he doesn't have a defender in his face. He can just, put it up real quick for an easy two. So that the thing I worry about with that, it's all fine. But the thing I worry about with that is, the SEC is going to have great defenders everywhere. Like you're going to have guys that, do they potentially just stuff that stuff? Like, do they get in and just like make it to where he doesn't hit those shots? Like, that's the only thing I really worry about. But other than that, I feel like Eli's got all the intangibles. Now, I don't expect him to be pulling up from three like it's Rucker Park or like a Blacktop or anything like that. I don't expect that. Like that stuff, I don't think is realistic next season. Like it's going to be a lot more formal offense with South Carolina. Not saying Moravian doesn't run it, but last night or on Thursday watching, it's kind of like right out of the gate, it's like it's 11-0. Boom. It's like they were just pulling it from wherever, man. It's like the All-Star game out here. Yes, there was defense, but it wasn't like it was sloppy at times, I think is the best way to put it. On both sides. Like again, Moravian won by 35 points, but it really felt like they could have won by a lot more. They just left a lot on the table with some mistakes they made, like a lot of turnovers last night. So look, Eli's a great player. I'm really excited about him. A lot of you guys should be too. I provided just a lot of info on that, but if you want more in depth, I'll have more stories coming out because I got to speak to both him and Hayden on Thursday night. So I'll have more stories out on that kind of when I get back from my trip to New York and all that stuff. But I will say, like, you guys should be really excited about Eli. He's the real deal in every sense of the word, and he's a good dude too. I mean, just talking to him, the guy knows ball. Like he's not some short quipped answers and all this and that. He's very calculated. It seems like he knows what he's talking about, and he's an under the radar guy in my opinion. Like again, he's not in all these top 100 rankings and all this and that, but he's a hooper. He's got that mindset of like he's got that killer instinct. I feel like, and he plays with a swagger too. Some real confidence to him that you would like like not cocky, but like like very confident in his abilities. I think is what I'm trying to get at. So really excited about him. Hayden Assemian. He didn't have the greatest game on Thursday. He only had like 4 points, but again, you just watch him out there. I think he's a big dude. Like he's very like strong. It looks like for being 235 pounds. I think if you bulk him up a little bit, he's like 6'6" right now, 235. You bulk him up a little bit to where maybe he's like, I don't know, like he doesn't need to be like BBV, like 260 or whatever. But like you put him at like that 3, maybe like a stretch 4, and he's kind of like that, and he gets a little bit bigger, maybe like 245, 250, maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. He could be a force, man, because there were a lot of times last night or on Thursday when he would whenever he did get the ball inside, he had some nice plays, but there were also times where, and give Ridgeview a lot of credit. Ridgeview was playing some solid defense last night. And by the way, Corey Corbett only had 9 points on 4 of 9 shooting. Didn't have the best night, but again, it was fine, I guess. Like he almost shot 50% from the floor, so not too bad from him. But he didn't do a ton. And Ridgeview kind of just they didn't look like they were in the same gym last night at times. Like they took shots that like I don't think they would be taking during a regular game against some teams, maybe on more of their level. You know what I mean? But against these prep teams stuff, I understand. Now, what I will say about Hayden is he didn't have the most points last night. He might have, lost the ball on a few inbound, like a few passes inside to the paint and stuff. And that's Ridgeview defending it pretty well. But I mean, that guy can leap out of the gym. I think he had a block last night on the glass. That was crazy. Our photographer Jackson Randall on Gamecock Central got a great photo of that, I think, which was sick. But also, like this guy, like, I mean, just some of the dunks he was doing during layup lines, like, absolutely nuts. Like he's got that athleticism, the length, and that's what Lamont brought up the other day during Carolina Calls. Like that's the stuff that's really going to help him develop into one of these guys. Because look, I think the playmaking ability will come, I think, over time. Maybe that's not like his true role. I don't know, but I think he's going to be a guy that like when he gets the right size and is in the building next year, I think the sky's the limit for him. And that's just genuinely honest, man. Like, for only watching these guys for one game, that's the only sample size I have to go off of. I think I was very pleased with what I saw. I think these guys are good, and I'm very excited to see what they do next. So, again, I'll have a lot of content to come off of that on GamecockCentral.com. Again, you can go back on from Friday. I'll have a story already out that's exclusive for subscribers. My real, genuine thoughts from what I saw, like what I'm just talking about now here. You can read it for yourself. I'll eventually have some stuff out on, how Hayden because Hayden and Eli also play together on the same team in case I didn't make that clear earlier. They play on the same team. So that's definitely going to help a lot. And I did ask them about that on Thursday and whatnot. So got that. And then something on Eli because Eli, man, kid's really, really talented. So excited about him, excited about Hayden. What's to come with this 2025 signing class. So that's going to do it for today's episode of GC Live Sunday Reset. We will be, let's see, I don't know what next week's date is. I know we're getting closer to Christmas next week, but I think we also have a basketball game next Sunday to cover. So I'll be there for that. We'll do Sunday Reset per usual. We'll have it probably back live next week. And we'll have a good time talking some hoops, a little bit of football, obviously, per usual, and we'll go from there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, if you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. hit the thumbs up button on this video if you enjoyed what you're hearing, and also go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page. So appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy NFL Sunday football if you have a team out there that you're watching, and I'll catch you guys next week. Thanks so much. See you guys again soon. Bye.